Part A. Listen to each word. Write the word you hear.
1. He is annoyed, isn't he? He is annoyed, isn't he? 2.
You were listening to me, weren't you? You were listening to me, weren't you?
3.
The phone's ringing, isn't it? The phone's ringing, isn't it?
4. Mel plays the violin, doesn't she? Mel plays the violin, doesn't she? 5.
Liam has done the dishes, hasn't he? Liam has done the dishes, hasn't he?
6. John studied art, didn't he? John studied art, didn't he? 7.
You haven't seen my pen, have you? You haven't seen my pen, have you?
8. You haven't seen my keys, have you? You haven't seen my keys, have you? 9.
You wouldn't go alone, would you? You wouldn't go alone, would you?
10.
She cycles to work, doesn't she? She cycles to work, doesn't she?
11.
He shouldn't eat so much, should he? He shouldn't eat so much, should he?
12.
It's not very warm today, is it? It's not very warm today, is it?
13.
You could help me, couldn't you? You could help me, couldn't you?
14.
Ben has gone to China, hasn't he? Ben has gone to China, hasn't he?
15.
She shouldn't work so hard, should she? She shouldn't work so hard, should she?
16.
That was a good concert, wasn't it? That was a good concert, wasn't it?
17.
He wouldn't let me try, would he? He wouldn't let me try, would he?
18.
Luis speaks English, doesn't he? Luis speaks English, doesn't he?
19.
She did tell you, didn't she? She did tell you, didn't she?
20. Renata worked in sales, didn't she? Renata worked in sales, didn't she?
'Listening to problem solving.
Hi, are you the volunteer coordinator?
Yep, Steve Jones. And you're Almaz? Did I say it right?
Yes, exactly. Almaz Bekele. Nice to meet you.
You too. Please, have a seat. I was just looking over your application to volunteer here at Quiet Palms, and it looks really good. Is it okay if I ask you some questions?
Of course. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see. You wrote that you've been a volunteer before. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. I volunteered last summer at the public library downtown.
What did you do there?
I worked with adults who wanted to learn how to read. I also taught a little writing, and on Saturdays, I read stories to the kids.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, but what I really liked was working with the older people. It felt like I was doing something really worthwhile.
Uh-huh.
Question 1.
What type of position is the woman applying for?
Question 2.
Where did the woman volunteer before?
Question 3.
What did the woman enjoy about her previous experience?
Now listen to part 2.
So now, tell me why you want to volunteer in a nursing home.
Well, I think I might want to work in the healthcare field someday, but I won't know for sure until I get some experience.
I see. Well, we'd love to have you volunteer here.
Great! When can I start?
I like your enthusiasm, but we have some health requirements. First, you need to take a blood test and a TB test. You can start as soon as we get the results. It usually takes 2 or 3 days.
Okay, I'll take care of that right away. Also, I was wondering, can you tell me what my responsibilities will be?
Sure. One thing volunteers do is they help residents with their meals. You might encourage them to eat, or just keep them company during mealtime.
Yeah, my grandmother always eats more when I'm with her. She likes having people around.
Question 4.
Why does the woman want to volunteer at this position?
Question 5.
What requirement must the woman fulfill for this position?
Question 6.
What duties will the woman mostly have at this position?
Now listen to part 3.
Then I'm sure you understand that you need to be patient and compassionate with the residents.
I know.
Volunteers also deliver mail and flowers, and they take residents for walks. You'll get more responsibilities as soon as you feel more confident.
Sounds good.
There's an orientation next Monday at 8:30.
I'll be there.
One more thing. You'll need to make a commitment to volunteer at least 3 hours per week.
No problem. I can't wait to start.
Question 7.
What type of personality would help the woman?
Question 8.
What commitment must the woman have for this position?
Listening to a daily life conversation.
Good morning, Ms. Baez. I understand that you're the volunteer coordinator for the Science Museum.
Yes, I am.
My name is Moy Wang. I'm interested in volunteering at the museum, and I'd like to ask a few questions.
Of course. What would you like to know?
First, what kind of opportunities are there for volunteers?
We use volunteers for many different things at the museum. For example, some are meet and greet volunteers. They greet people who come to the museum and answer general questions. Others are museum guides. This requires a special knowledge of our exhibits and different areas of science. What are you interested in?
I'm interested in becoming a guide. I'm studying now for a degree in education. I want to teach high school biology. I think this would be a worthwhile experience for me as a future teacher.
Well, you'll have to fill out an application, of course. Then, as soon as your application is accepted, you'll take the guide's orientation and training course. We also require a commitment of at least 1/2 day each week. Do you think you can manage that?
That would be perfect. I can't wait to get started.
Wonderful. Of course, I can't say anything definite until you complete the training, but I hope to welcome you soon as one of our volunteers.
Thanks very much.
Question 1.
Where is this conversation taking place?
Question 2.
What would the man like to do?
Question 3.
What do most volunteers do?
Question 4.
What position is the man interested in?
Question 5.
Why is he interested in this position?
Question 6.
What must the man do before becoming a volunteer?
Question 7.
How does the man feel about the commitment?
Listening for information.
So we can look forward to sunny skies and warm weather this weekend. Our next story is reported by Anne Lykoff. She is at the scene of a fire. Anne?
Thanks, Steve. I'm here at what was the scene of a fire. This house caught on fire this morning. Firefighters arrived quickly and everyone was safe. But it was a close call. You see, the woman who lives here, Mrs. Ravenscroft, is deaf. When the fire started, the fire alarm went off. Mrs. Ravenscroft couldn't hear the alarm. But Mrs. Ravenscroft is the owner of a special dog named Kimba. And thanks to her dog Kimba, she's okay now.
So what happened, Anne?
Well, the fire started in the kitchen. Mrs. Ravenscroft was in the living room and did not hear the alarm. Kimba did hear the alarm and started running up and down the hall from the kitchen to the living room. Mrs. Ravenscroft saw the dog running and knew something was wrong. Mrs. Ravenscroft went to the kitchen and saw the fire. Flames were already 3 feet high. She immediately called 911 and the fire department came. Without the dog, she would not have known there was an alarm. Kimba saved Mrs. Ravenscroft's life. Mrs. Ravenscroft is very lucky. As you might guess, this is not just any dog. This is a special dog. Kimba is a hearing dog.
Huh, a hearing dog. What do hearing dogs do, Anne?
Well, hearing dogs are specially trained to assist deaf people. Hearing dogs tell deaf people about many different sounds. For example, the doorbell ringing, a baby crying, a fire alarm, or the telephone ringing, and many more sounds too. Hearing dogs go to special schools where they are trained how to tell deaf people about important sounds.
How do hearing dogs do it? How do they tell people about sounds?
Well, when the dog hears a sound, for example, the doorbell, the dog first goes to the deaf person. The dog touches the deaf person to get their attention. And then the deaf person knows the dog is trying to tell them something. Next, the dog goes to the sound. In this example, the door. The deaf person then knows that someone is ringing the doorbell or knocking on the door.
Where do deaf people use their hearing dogs?
Deaf people use hearing dogs in their homes, of course. But sounds are everywhere, at work, on the bus, or on the street. So deaf people bring their dogs with them everywhere they go. Also, hearing dogs can go into all public places, such as restaurants and stores. Basically, a hearing dog can go to work, on the bus, and out to dinner too.
Really? Interesting.
Yes, it really is. So Mrs. Ravenscroft didn't hear the alarm, but her companion and hearing dog, Kimba, did. Before the fire, Mrs. Ravenscroft called Kimba her personal hearing dog. Now Mrs. Ravenscroft says Kimba is her personal hero dog because Kimba saved her life. So tonight, our story has a happy ending and everyone is safe. Back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Anne. And that's the news for this evening. Until tomorrow, good night.
Question 1.
Where is the woman reporting from?
Question 2.
How did Mrs. Ravenscroft find out about the fire?
Question 3.
How do hearing dogs assist people?
Question 4.
How do hearing dogs communicate to the person?
Question 5.
Where do hearing dogs enable their owners to go?
Question 6.
How has Mrs. Ravenscroft's opinion of Kimba changed since the fire? Listening to a discussion.
After sitting and talking with Chris Waddell for 20 minutes, you feel like anything is possible. Not so remarkable, perhaps, since he is a world champion skier, and he has also climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. If it were not for the fact that Chris is sitting in a wheelchair and is paralyzed from the waist down. The ski accident that caused his paralysis happened when Chris was a college student. Nevertheless, just 2 years after his accident, he won a place on the U.S. adaptive ski team. During the next 11 years, he won a total of 12 ski medals and, as a result, became the most decorated male skier in Paralympic history. But Chris is not one to rest on past achievements. His mission to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa, was just another of the ways Chris is proving that we should change the way in which we view people with special needs. This is why I visited him at his Utah base, so that I could learn more about this incredibly difficult challenge and what inspired it. So, Chris, what does being disabled actually mean to you? What is it that motivates you?
I look at it this way. We all have certain shortcomings. It's just that some are more visible than others. I think I'm extremely fortunate. Through my disability, I've done things and met people, presidents even, that I would never have met otherwise.
What inspired the climb up Mount Kilimanjaro?
Well, the date I chose to climb Mount Kilimanjaro was a halfway point in my life. I'd spent half of my life in a wheelchair, so it was a personal challenge. I am first and foremost an athlete, but I did it also in order to shine a light back on the disabled, to show that if you take the time to look, you might be surprised. People generally have a lot of preconceived ideas about disabled people. I wanted my climb to challenge those views, and so that people would start to see the 21+ million disabled people in the world in a completely different light. It's about raising awareness.
How did you actually achieve it?
I chose Mount Kilimanjaro because it's more readily accessible. You don't need ice picks and so on. But I used a specially adapted bicycle that I push with my arms. It was very physically challenging, and it took every last bit of my strength, but I had a team of friends, a doctor, and porters who carried the supplies. Also a film crew who made the documentary about the climb.
Chris Waddell has dedicated his life to defying the conventional wisdom of what a paraplegic can and cannot do. As a result, he has become a role model for all of us. Visit Chris's website and be inspired.